Hey BoLS fans, AdamHarry back again with another BoLS Tabletop Ready tips for the rest of us, where I take you through some basic stuff to get your table stuff tabletop ready. So today I actually have one of the Tilescape tiles from Secret Weapon Minis. This is again the Forgotten City Tile, I believe. It's the one that's basically I'm going to use for my desert Nids. I think it'll work out really well. If you look here, that's what my Nid bases look like mostly. So I'm going to replicate that look across this tile board, and I'm actually going to use some paints that I picked up at the hardware store because it makes a lot more sense than using the little GW pot paints. I am going to use some of those for touch-ups, but I'll go through all of that later. But the big thing is, if you're painting a whole board of these tiles, go to the paint store, go to your local Home Depot, Lowe's, what have you. Pick up some big pots, big cans of paint. You can usually get them a pretty good deal. It's a lot better than for your money to stretch that out there versus using the miniature GW pots of paint for painting a whole board of these. But I'm only painting one tile today for basically a display board for my Tyranids. So yeah, let's get started. First thing I'm going to do here, I've got the tile here set up. I'm actually going to take this outside and prime it white. I know a lot of people asked me why I did that last time with my yellow Nids. The reason I prime stuff white is because overall you're going to get brighter colors just starting with that flat color of flat white. I want that base across the miniature, or in this case the tile, so that it's all uniform. Just some standard white spray paint primer works just fine. You can also, if you're at the hardware store, you can also buy paint and primer in one. That's kind of up to you. I found some testers, not the brand testers, but I found some paint testers that match the color I wanted, so I'm going to go with those. They weren't paint and primer, which is why I'm going to apply the white base coat first. So first things first, white primer. We're back after priming white, as you can see here. I've got the tile primed white. It's a cold day here, and the primer can was not being very cooperative, so I have a couple splotches, but that's okay because the point is that the primer's on the model and it's dry, it's ready to go. So I did go to the hardware store and I picked up a color sample for pretty cheap. This is Bear Premium Plus stuff, but again, they probably have other brands. They were able to color match. I found a close color to what I typically use, which is the Citadel Bubonic Brown here, but I went and I went through their color palette and found one that matched. I asked them to go as flat as possible, which is this stuff. You don't want satin or high gloss finish, probably not, unless you want really shiny stuff. So I try to ask them for as flat as possible. They had this stuff. This is not a plug for Bear in particular, but this is just what they had, so this is what I went with. This whole thing cost me about $3, so, and this pot of paint cost me $4. So you can see where I'm going with this. If you're doing a whole table, this is definitely the way to go. Yeah, go to your hardware store, ask for some help, you know, and they'll have some options for you. Again, try to go flat. Try to avoid satin if they have to go satin. You can use a matte spray to take the shine off, but I wouldn't recommend it. Go with a matte or a flat as close as you can. So next step is pretty simple. I'm going to cover the majority of this tile in this color. I'm going to paint the sand areas for sure. I'm going to hit some of the dirt areas on the tile, because those are actually different colors. And I'll go through all the steps here in a minute. So first things, or second thing now, is after the primer, go ahead and do your base coat. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to take care of that off camera, and we'll come right back. So I've got the first color down. Again, that was the paint that I picked up at the hardware store. I'm actually going to switch over now to, I know I didn't want to use pots of paint, but I have an old pot of Camry Brown foundation paint. I'm actually trying to get rid of this stuff because it's getting up there. There's not a whole lot left. It should be enough to do this board, so I'm actually going to use this stuff next. I don't know what the equivalent is. I think it's khaki stone or something like that. Anyway, that's the next step, as I do Camry Brown on all these stone parts. So these tiles, and then this part will all be Camry Brown. The final step after that will be a dry brush of bleach bone, or the equivalent if you went to the hardware store and picked up some paint. Again, if you're doing a whole table, I really would recommend trying to get some paint match from the hardware store. It did come out a little thin in some spots, so I might touch that up. before I do the final dry brush. But for now, let me go ahead and clean this stuff up. I did want to mention I did go into all of the recesses here, the gaps, just because I wanted to have the sand there. It was just easier to do all of the lines versus trying to pick out the ones that only had sand at the bottom. So anyway, that was one thing. The other thing I was doing when I was painting this, I do want to recommend that you rotate the tile while you're painting it, just to make sure that you're covering all the areas, just like a regular model. So just make sure that you're getting good coverage wherever you're going. Try to paint everything in the same direction as well. That helps. I see a couple spots now that the paint's, it's not quite dry, but it's drying where I can see the brush strokes. So I'll probably clean all that stuff here, up here, because this is going to be used for my display board for the Army. So it's part of it anyway. So anyway, yeah, let me go ahead and paint the stone parts, and we'll come back after I'm done. We're back after getting the Khemri Brown on the model, or on the tile here. As you can see, just went for pretty even coverage on all the stone and the tile walkway parts. I did want to leave some of the sand, some of that other yellow coming through the bottom to kind of show off, you know, the sand's kind of moving in, sweeping over. I'm half tempted to go back with another lighter tan to kind of accentuate some of the stonework as well. But I'm going to see how this dry brush step turns out before I do that. I might end up redoing it. But the next step is just going to be to take a cream color, like old school bleach bone here. Again, I have an old pot I'm trying to get rid of. Just want to get it used up. So again, if you're doing a whole table, check out the hardware store for better options there. But one of the key things I want to call out too is on these little rocks and stuff like that, and specifically these right here, you want to take your time and make sure you get good coverage. There are a couple areas right in here that I'm going to go back in and clean up with the yellow as well. The reason being is you want to make sure, because those little details are going to come out when you dry brush, so you want to make sure that they're actually properly covered. Just looking at it from this angle, I can see a couple more spots that I'm going to go back in now that this is dry, and touch up, and then do the final dry brush. So with that said, next step is just going to be the dry brush. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys my dry brush technique real quick. So I'm just going to take my my paint pot here. Going to get a small dry brush. You can use a bigger one for this project, but I'm going to do it real quick. So get a little dab of paint on the tip there. Nothing crazy. I'm going to use another palette here, and I'm just going to kind of dab that off there. Seeing as though this is kind of a big project, I'm going to leave quite a bit on the tip there. And then get in here, my palette down so I can get a little closer. Camera's obviously going to be in the way, so I'm not going to do too much dry brushing, but you're going to go over the whole board, kind of like this. And you want to kind of make sure that you're dry brushing in one direction, just because if you don't, your brush strokes are going to show up. It's going to be pretty obvious. But you're going to go over the whole board, sand included. Just reapply some paint there. And you're going to want, if you get any splotches like that, you're going to want to really keep going over that area to kind of thin it out as much as possible. And again, this is just one way to do desert. There's tons of other ways to do it, but I find that this works really well. So I'm going to do this with the camera out of my way. And if you do have a spot that you have a little bit too much paint on, like this area right here, just repaint over it. It's just paint. It's not that big a deal. So, alright, let me get to work on the rest of this, and we'll come back when I'm done. Okay, I'm all done with the dry brush, and as you can see here, it really helped pick out a lot of those details that Secret Weapon did on the tiles. That's one of the things I was really impressed with these tiles to begin with, and why I want to use it for a display board is just because it's not just flat surface, there's a lot of detail for dry brushing to pick up on. So I knew that dry brushing was going to be just a really quick way to make these tiles pop out, and as you can see here, lots of the detail popped right out. The final test though is, does it match my base for my Nids? And as you can see here, it's pretty darn close. Overall, I'm really happy with that technique and that process. So yeah, I think it'll look really cool with my my Tyranids on here. This is a 12 by 12 board, 1 foot by 1 foot. If you got 2 or 4 of these total, you can make a really nice little carrying board with your display board for your army if you wanted to, or if you have glass cabinets you want to put them on, that would totally work just fine. Anyway, this has been another Tabletop Ready from BoLS. This is AdamHarry signing off. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, drop them below. Subscribe, links, shares, likes, all that fun stuff. We appreciate the feedback. Again, AdamHarry from BoLS signing off. Have a good one.